The thick green jungle of planet Verdania stretched in all directions as far as anyone could see. Tall trees reached up to the sky like giant fingers, their leaves so thick that only small spots of sunlight could break through to the forest floor. The air was heavy and warm, filled with the sounds of strange birds and insects that no human had ever heard before. Commander Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked his map one more time. His small team of humans had been walking through this jungle for 3 hours now, following a path that seemed to lead nowhere. Behind him walked Dr. Lisa Campbell, a woman who studied alien life forms and knew more about strange creatures than anyone else on Earth. She carried a heavy pack full of tools and bottles, always ready to examine something new and interesting. Kevin Wright moved through the jungle like he had been born there. As the team's plant expert, he could tell which vines were safe to touch and which ones might hurt them. He had grown up on a farm and spent most of his life working with plants, so even these alien trees and flowers made sense to him in some way. Every few minutes he would stop to look at a strange leaf or flower, making notes in his small book. Amy Rodriguez walked at the back of the group, carrying a large radio on her back. She was there linked to the ships that waited in space above the planet. Every hour she would report their position and make sure they could still talk to the other teams exploring different parts of this world. Her job was simple but very important, because getting lost on an alien planet was not something anyone wanted to experience. The humans were not alone on this journey. Walking beside them were 3 members of the Zephyrian race, aliens who looked like large lizards that could walk on 2 legs. Their skin was covered in beautiful blue and green scales that changed color slightly as they moved through the shadows and sunlight. The leader of these aliens was High Chancellor Vexstar, a tall and proud creature whose golden eyes seemed to look down on everything around him. Vexstar walked with the confidence of someone who believed he was better than everyone else. His people had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, before humans even learned to build simple machines. He wore clothes made from materials that seemed to glow softly in the dim jungle light, and around his neck hung a device that could protect him from almost any danger this planet might offer. The other 2 Zephyrians followed their leader without question. Sub-Commander Krellon was smaller than Vexstar, but still much taller than any human. He carried medical equipment that could heal wounds and cure diseases in ways that human doctors could only dream about. The 3rd alien, tech specialist Mordix, had tools that could scan through solid rock and detect metal buried deep underground. Both groups were here for the same reason. Somewhere in this jungle stood the ruins of an ancient city built by a race that had disappeared long before either humans or Zephyrians had learned to fly between the stars. The old story said that this lost people had knowledge and technology that could change everything. They had built things that even the Zephyrians could not understand, and both species wanted to find these secrets. Jake Morrison stopped walking and raised his hand to signal the others. Through the trees ahead he could see stone walls covered in thick vines and moss. The ruins they had been looking for were finally in sight. The ancient stones were gray and weathered by time, but they still stood strong after all these years. Dr. Campbell moved forward with excitement, pulling out her scanner to begin studying the alien writing carved into the stone walls. She had spent years learning about dead languages and ancient symbols, and now she had the chance to see something that no human had ever examined before. Vexstar looked at the ruins with interest, but also with the attitude of someone who expected to find exactly what he was looking for. He activated several devices that began scanning the area, looking for hidden passages and secret rooms that might contain the treasures they sought. Kevin Wright noticed something that the others had missed. The plants growing around these ruins were different from the ones they had seen during their long walk through the jungle. These vines and flowers seemed older and stronger, as if they had been growing in this place for much longer than the normal jungle plants. He began taking samples, wondering if these ancient plants might hold secrets of their own. Amy Rodriguez set up her radio equipment near a large stone block and began testing her connection to the ships above. The thick jungle and the strange energy coming from the ruins made communication difficult, but she managed to send a message that they had found what they were looking for. As the two groups began exploring the ancient site, the differences between them became more clear. The humans used simple tools and trusted their eyes and hands to learn about the ruins. They touched the stones, smelled the air, and listened carefully to every sound around them. Dr. Campbell traced the carved symbols with her finger, trying to understand their meaning through careful observation. The Zephyrians used machines that could see through walls and detect the smallest details without touching anything. Their scanners could tell them the age of the stones and the composition of the metal used in the ancient decorations. Vextar seemed proud of his superior technology, and often made comments about how primitive human methods appeared to be. The ruins covered a large area, with buildings connected by stone walkways that had been overgrown by centuries of jungle growth. Some structures were still mostly complete, while others had crumbled until only their foundations remained. In the center of the complex stood a tall tower that reached up above the jungle canopy, its peak hidden by thick clouds. As they worked, the Zephyrians made it clear that they considered themselves the senior partners in this exploration. They had better equipment, more experience with ancient technologies, and a much longer history of space travel. The humans were welcome to help, but the aliens expected to make all the important decisions about what to study and where to look for the most valuable discoveries. The morning sun was getting higher as both teams continued their work among the ancient ruins. High Chancellor Vextar stood before a large stone wall covered in strange symbols that seemed to tell the story of the people who had once lived in this place. His golden eyes moved across the carved pictures and writing, using his advanced scanner to record every detail for later study. Dr. Lisa Campbell worked nearby, using her much simpler tools to copy the same symbols into her notebook. She drew each mark carefully by hand, believing that sometimes the human eye could see things that machines might miss. Her years of studying ancient languages had taught her that understanding old writing required more than just copying symbols. It needed patience and careful thought. Vextar watched the human woman work and shook his head, with what looked like amusement. He could not understand why anyone would use such slow and primitive methods when technology could do the same job much faster and more accurately. His scanner had already recorded thousands of symbols in the time it took Dr. Campbell to draw. Just a few dozen, the Zephyrian leader decided to move to a different wall where the symbols appeared to be older and possibly more important. As he walked across the ancient stone courtyard, he noticed that his personal protection field was making a soft humming sound. The device created an invisible barrier around his body that would stop almost any attack from the dangerous creatures that lived in this jungle. Dr. Campbell looked up from her work and called out to the alien leader. She had been studying the local insects and animals during their journey through the jungle, and she had noticed several species that seemed particularly attracted to the warmth and electrical fields that the Zephyrian equipment produced. She wanted to warn Vextar that his protection device might actually be drawing unwanted attention from some of the more dangerous local creatures. Vextar turned to listen to the human scientist, but his expression showed that he was not very interested in her concerns. He had complete confidence in his people's technology and their understanding of how to stay safe on alien worlds. The Zephyrians had been exploring dangerous planets for thousands of years, and their equipment had never failed them before. Alien leader raised one scaled hand to dismiss Dr. Campbell's warning. He explained that Zephyrian biology was much stronger and more resistant to disease and poison than the fragile human form. Their advanced medical knowledge could handle any threat that this primitive planet might offer. He considered the woman's concerns to be based on human weakness and fear rather than real danger. To prove his point, Vextar reached up and switched off his personal protection field. The soft humming sound stopped, and the invisible barrier that surrounded his body disappeared. He spread his arms wide and took a deep breath of the jungle air, showing that he felt no fear of this world or its creatures. Kevin Wright looked up from the strange plants he was studying and frowned with worry. During their long walk through the jungle, he had noticed many small insects that seemed to be attracted to movement and heat. Most of them appeared harmless, but he had learned from his years working with nature that even small creatures could sometimes be very dangerous. The plant expert opened his mouth to add his own warning to Dr. Campbell's concerns, but before he could speak, a tiny insect no bigger than a human fingernail landed on Vextar's exposed neck. The little creature was brown and green, perfectly colored to blend in with the jungle environment. It looked so harmless that most people would never notice it or worry about its presence. The insect bit the Zephyrian leader just below his left ear, in a spot where his scales were thinner and softer than the rest of his skin. Vextar felt only a small pinch, like the touch of a thorn or the prick of a needle. He brushed the tiny creature away with one hand and laughed at the worried expressions on the human faces around him. The alien leader continued his examination of the wall symbols, confident that his superior biology would protect him from any effects of the insect bite. He had been bitten by creatures on dozens of different worlds, and his people's natural resistance had always kept him safe. This small jungle bug could not possibly be any different from all the others, but within just a few minutes Vextar began to feel that something was wrong. The spot where the insect had bitten him started to feel hot and tight, as if the skin was being stretched too hard. He reached up to touch the area and found that it was beginning to swell and change color from healthy blue-green to a sickly yellow. Dr. Campbell noticed the change in the alien leader's appearance and moved closer to get a better look. She had studied many different types of poison and disease during her career, and she could see that Vextar was having some kind of serious reaction to the insect bite. The swelling was spreading quickly, and the color change was moving down his neck toward his chest. Sub-Commander Krellon was the first of the other Zephyrians to notice that something was seriously wrong with their leader. The medical officer quickly activated his scanner and began examining Vextar's condition. The readings showed that unknown toxins were spreading through the High Chancellor's bloodstream at an alarming rate. Vextar tried to maintain his dignity and continue working, but his hands began to shake and his vision started to blur. The confident expression on his face changed to one of confusion and growing fear as he realized that his body was not fighting off the poison as it should have been able to do. The alien leader took a step toward his medical officer, but his legs suddenly became weak and unsteady. He reached out to grab the stone wall for support, but his coordination was failing rapidly. His golden eyes, which had always been sharp and focused, now looked cloudy and uncertain. Krellon's scanner showed that the toxin from the tiny insect was attacking Vextar's nervous system in a way that Zephyrian medicine had never encountered before. The poison seemed to be specifically designed to affect reptilian biology, targeting the exact type of nerve pathways that Zephyrians use to control their movements and thoughts. Commander Jake Morrison immediately ordered his team to form a protective circle around the sick alien leader. Amy Rodriguez began trying to contact their ships in orbit to request emergency medical assistance, while Kevin Wright started looking through his notes about the local insect species to see if he had any information that might help. Vextar's condition continued to worsen rapidly. His breathing became shallow and irregular, and the discoloration in his scales was spreading across his entire body. The proud and confident alien leader who had dismissed human concerns just minutes earlier was now collapsing to his knees, barely able to remain conscious as the unknown poison continued its deadly work. High Chancellor Vextar lay on the ancient stone floor, his breathing coming in short, difficult gasps. The proud alien leader who had stood tall and confident just minutes earlier was now helpless as the mysterious poison continued to spread through his body. His beautiful blue-green scales had turned an ugly gray color, and his golden eyes were closed as he fought to stay alive. Sub-Commander Krellon worked frantically with his advanced medical equipment, running scan after scan to try to understand what was happening to his leader. The Zephyrian medical officer had trained for years to handle any kind of injury or illness that might affect his people during their travels through space. His tools could cure diseases that would kill humans in hours and heal wounds that would leave permanent damage on other species, but nothing in his medical database matched what he was seeing now. The toxin from the tiny jungle insect was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. It seemed to attack the specific type of nervous system that only reptilian species possessed, targeting nerve pathways that were completely different from those found in mammals or other biological forms. Tech specialist Mordex had stopped his examination of the ruins and was now using his most powerful scanners to analyze samples of the poison that was flowing through Vextar's bloodstream. His equipment could break down chemical compounds to their smallest parts and identify toxins that were invisible to the naked eye. Yet even with all this advanced technology, he could not find a way to neutralize or remove the deadly substance. Dr. Lisa Campbell knelt beside the dying alien leader, using her simple human medical scanner to take her own readings. Her equipment was much less advanced than what the Zephyrians possessed, but she had years of experience studying how different toxins affected various species. She had worked with snake bites, spider venom, and plant poisons from dozens of worlds that humans had explored. As Dr. Campbell studied her readings, she began to notice something that the Zephyrian medical equipment had missed. The structure of the toxin looked familiar to her, even though she had never seen this exact compound before. It reminded her of certain types of food poisoning that affected humans, particularly the kind caused by eating spoiled meat or contaminated vegetables. Commander Jake Morrison watched his team work while keeping one eye on the two remaining Zephyrians. He knew that if their leader died, there could be serious problems between the two species. The aliens might blame the humans for not preventing the accident, or they might think that the humans had somehow caused Vextar's condition on purpose. Kevin Wright was searching through his notes and samples, looking for any information about the insects that lived in this jungle. During their long journey to the ruins, he had collected specimens of dozens of different creatures and made careful observations about their behavior and biology. He remembered seeing the small brown and green insect that had bitten Vextar, but at the time it had seemed completely harmless. Amy Rodriguez was having trouble reaching their ships in orbit because the strange energy from the ruins was interfering with her radio signals. She kept trying different frequencies and power levels, hoping to get through long enough to request emergency medical supplies or advice from the human doctors aboard their vessel. As the minutes passed, Vextar's condition grew worse. His breathing became even more labored, and his body temperature was dropping to dangerous levels. The gray discoloration was now covering most of his scales, and he had stopped responding when Krellon tried to talk to him. Dr. Campbell suddenly looked up from her scanner with an expression of excitement mixed with uncertainty. She had been thinking about the chemical structure of the toxin and comparing it to similar compounds that she had studied during her career. The poison reminded her strongly of certain bacterial toxins that could be neutralized by sulfur-based compounds. The human scientist remembered reading about old folk remedies that farmers and country people had used for generations to treat food poisoning and infected wounds. Many of these traditional cures involved common foods that contained high levels of sulfur compounds, particularly vegetables from the onion family. Kevin Wright overheard Dr. Campbell talking about sulfur compounds and suddenly remembered something his grandmother had taught him when he was a young boy working on her farm. She had always said that onions could cure almost anything, from infected cuts to stomach problems caused by bad food. At the time, he had thought it was just an old superstition, but now he wondered if there might be real science behind the folk wisdom. The plant expert looked through the supplies that the human team had brought with them on this expedition. Most of their food was in the form of dried rations and concentrated nutrients, but he remembered seeing some dehydrated vegetables that were meant to add flavor to their meals during the long journey through the jungle. Amy Rodriguez heard Kevin talking about onions and remembered that she had packed several dried onion bulbs in her personal supplies. She had brought them because she missed the taste of real food and wanted to improve the bland expedition rations whenever possible. She quickly opened her pack and pulled out a small bag containing 3 wrinkled brown onions. Dar Campbell took one of the onions and examined it carefully. She knew that fresh onions contained high levels of a sulfur compound called allicin, which had been proven to have antibacterial and antitoxin properties. The dried onions might not be as potent as fresh ones, but they should still contain enough of the active compounds to potentially help neutralize the poison in Vexstar-S system. Sub-Commander Krellon watched the humans discussing their primitive folk remedy with a mixture of desperation and disbelief. His advanced medical training told him that such simple treatments could not possibly work against a toxin that their sophisticated equipment could not cure. But his leader was dying, and they had tried everything else without success. Dr. Campbell began preparing the onion treatment by cutting one of the dried bulbs in half and crushing it to release as much of the sulfur compounds as possible. She mixed the crushed onion with some of their purified water to create a paste that could be applied to the bite wound, and a liquid that might be absorbed into Vexstar-S bloodstream. The human scientist explained her theory to both teams as she worked. The sulfur compounds in the onion should bind with the toxin molecules and neutralize their ability to damage nerve tissue. It was similar to the way that certain antidotes worked against snake venom, using one chemical to cancel out the effects of another. Commander Morrison made the difficult decision to allow Dr. Campbell to try her experimental treatment. They had no other options left, and waiting for help from their ships would take too long. Vexstar would be dead long before any advanced medical supplies could reach them through the thick jungle. The ancient stone courtyard had become silent except for the labored breathing of High Chancellor Vexstar and the quiet sounds of Dr. Lisa Campbell preparing her simple remedy. The dying Zephyrian leader lay motionless on the ground, his once proud form now looking fragile and small against the weathered stones that had witnessed thousands of years of history. Sub-Commander Krellon knelt beside his leader, his advanced medical scanner showing readings that grew more alarming with each passing minute. Vexstar-S vital signs were failing rapidly, and the Zephyrian medical officer had exhausted every treatment in his sophisticated arsenal. His people's technology, which had saved countless lives across the galaxy, was completely useless against this simple jungle toxin. The other Zephyrian, tech specialist Mordex, had stopped his scientific work entirely and was now focused on his leader's condition. He ran continuous scans of the poison as it spread through Vexstar-S nervous system, hoping to find some weakness or pattern that their medicine could exploit. But the toxin seemed perfectly designed to attack reptilian biology in ways that their science could not counteract. Dr. Campbell worked with steady hands despite the enormous pressure she felt. She had crushed half of the dried onion into a thick paste, releasing the sharp smell of sulfur compounds into the warm jungle air. The other half she had mixed with purified water to create a liquid that could potentially be absorbed through Vexstar-S skin or respiratory system. Kevin Wright assisted the human scientist by holding supplies and tools while she prepared the treatment. His knowledge of plants and natural remedies was limited compared to Dr. Campbell's medical training, but he understood enough about chemistry to know that what they were attempting might actually work. The sulfur compounds in onions had been used by humans for thousands of years to fight infections and neutralize poisons. Commander Jake Morrison stood guard over the group, watching the jungle around them for any signs of danger while keeping an eye on the two remaining Zephyrians. He knew that the next few minutes would determine not just whether Vexstar lived or died, but also the future relationship between humans and the Zephyrian people. If their primitive remedy failed, the aliens might never trust human knowledge. Again, Amy Rodriguez had finally managed to establish a weak radio connection with their ships in orbit. She quickly explained the situation to the medical officers aboard the human vessel, but they confirmed what everyone already knew: there was no way to get advanced medical supplies to the surface quickly enough to save Vexstar-S life. The human doctors could only wish them luck with their experimental treatment. Dr. Campbell took a deep breath and looked at the two Zephyrians who were watching her every move. She explained once more that the sulfur compounds in the onion should neutralize the toxin by binding to its active molecules and preventing them from continuing to damage Vexstar-S nervous system. The theory was sound, but she had never tested it on an alien biology before. Krellon listened to the human's explanation with the desperate attention of someone who had no other choices left. His medical training told him that this folk remedy was unscientific and primitive, But his readings showed that Vexstar had less than 30 minutes to live unless something changed. He gave Dr. Campbell permission to try her treatment, knowing that he would have to answer to the Zephyrian government. If their leader died under his care, the human scientists began by applying the onion paste directly to the bite wound on Vexstar's neck. The area was badly swollen and discolored, but she worked the sulfur-rich mixture into the damaged tissue, hoping that it would be absorbed into the bloodstream and begin neutralizing the toxin at its source. Next, Dr. Campbell used a small medical device to create an opening in Vexstar's respiratory system where she could introduce the liquid onion mixture. Zephyrion's breath through small vents along their neck and chest, and she carefully placed drops of the sulfur solution into these openings, allowing it to be absorbed through the thin membranes inside. The treatment process was slow and careful, with Dr. Campbell monitoring Vexstar's vital signs constantly to make sure she was not making his condition worse. The other humans watched in tense silence while the Zephyrians tracked every change in their leader's body. Chemistry with their advanced scanners. For the first few minutes after the treatment began, nothing seemed to change. Vexstar's breathing remained shallow and irregular. His scales stayed the sickly gray color, and his body temperature continued to drop toward dangerous levels. Dr. Campbell began to worry that her theory had been wrong, or that the dried onions were not potent enough. To counteract such a powerful toxin, Kevin Wright noticed the change first. He was watching Vexstar's face carefully when he saw a slight improvement in the alien's breathing pattern. The gasps became less desperate and more regular, as if his lungs were beginning to work normally again. Kevin pointed this out to Dr. Campbell, who immediately checked her medical scanner for confirmation. The readings showed that something was indeed happening inside Vexstar's body. The spread of the toxin had slowed, and in some areas it appeared to be retreating. The sulfur compounds from the onion were binding with the poison molecules exactly as Dr. Campbell had hoped they would, neutralizing their ability to damage nerve tissue. Sub-Commander Krelon watched his own scanner with growing amazement as Vexstar's vital signs began to stabilize for the first time since the insect bite. The High Chancellor's heart rate became stronger and more regular, his blood pressure started to rise toward normal levels, and his brain activity showed signs of improvement. The gray discoloration in Vexstar's scales began to fade slowly, starting from the areas closest to where Dr. Campbell had applied the onion paste. The healthy blue-green color returned gradually, spreading outward from the treatment site like water flowing across a dry surface. His breathing became deeper and more natural with each passing minute. After 20 minutes of treatment, Vexstar's golden eyes opened for the first time since he had collapsed. He looked confused and weak, but he was clearly conscious and aware of his surroundings. He tried to speak, but his voice was just a whisper, and the words were in his own language rather than the common tongue that both species used for communication. Krelon quickly moved to his leader's side and began speaking to him in Zephyrian, explaining what had happened and how the humans had saved his life with their primitive medicine. Vexstar listened with growing wonder as he learned that a simple earth vegetable had succeeded where all of their advanced technology had failed. Dr. Campbell continued to monitor the alien leader's recovery, making sure that the treatment was having no harmful side effects and that the toxin was completely neutralized. Her simple medical scanner showed that Vexstar's nervous system was returning to normal function, and the dangerous poison was being broken down and eliminated from his body. High Chancellor Vexstar sat up slowly among the ancient ruins, his golden eyes clear and focused for the first time in over an hour. The gray discoloration had completely faded from his scales, which now showed their natural beautiful blue-green color in the dappled jungle sunlight. His breathing was strong and regular, and the swelling around the insect bite had gone down to almost nothing. The Zephyrian leader looked at Dr. Lisa Campbell with an expression that mixed gratitude, amazement, and something that might have been embarrassment. Just a short time ago, he had dismissed human knowledge as primitive and inferior to his people's advanced science. Now he owed his life to a simple folk remedy that used nothing more sophisticated than half of a dried onion and some clean water. Dr. Campbell packed away her medical supplies with quiet satisfaction, but she showed no signs of pride or superiority despite her success. She had simply done what any good scientist would do when faced with a problem, using all the knowledge available to her to find a solution. The fact that this knowledge came from ancient human traditions rather than modern technology did not make it any less valuable. Sub-Commander Krellon was studying the readings from his medical scanner with fascination and disbelief. The data showed exactly how the sulfur compounds from the onion had neutralized the jungle toxin, but his advanced training had never taught him that such simple chemistry could be so effective. He began asking Dr. Campbell detailed questions about how humans had discovered this treatment and what other natural remedies they might know. Kevin Wright helped Vexstar stand up and walk around the courtyard to make sure his strength was fully returning. The plant expert explained how his grandmother and other country people had used onions and similar vegetables to treat various ailments for hundreds of years. This knowledge had been passed down through generations of farmers and healers, who learned through trial and error what worked and what did not. Commander Jake Morrison felt a sense of relief that went far beyond just saving one alien's life. The successful treatment had prevented what could have been a serious diplomatic crisis between humans and Zephyrians. More importantly, it had shown that the two species could work together as equals, each contributing their own strengths to solve problems that neither could handle alone. Amy Rodriguez re-established contact with the ships in orbit and reported that the medical emergency was over. The doctors aboard both the human and Zephyrian vessels were eager to learn about the treatment that had saved Vexstar's life. They wanted to study the onion remedy and understand how it could be integrated with more advanced medical techniques for future emergencies. As Vexstar regained his full strength, he began to see the ancient ruins and the entire expedition in a completely different way. His near-death experience had taught him that wisdom and knowledge could come from unexpected sources, and that dismissing other people's ideas based on their apparent simplicity was both arrogant and dangerous. The Zephyrian leader called both teams together in the center of the stone courtyard where he had almost died. He spoke in a voice that was humble and thoughtful, very different from the proud and condescending tone he had used earlier that morning. He admitted that he had been wrong to look down on human knowledge and methods, and he apologized for his arrogant behavior. Vexstar explained that his people had become so focused on advanced technology that they had forgotten the value of practical experience and traditional wisdom. The Zephyrians could scan and analyze anything in the universe, but they had lost the ability to think creatively about simple solutions to complex problems. Humans had kept this ability alive through their connection to nature and their willingness to learn from the past. Dr. Campbell accepted the alien leader's apology graciously and suggested that both species had valuable knowledge to share with each other. The Zephyrians could offer advanced tools and techniques that would help humans explore the galaxy more safely and efficiently. In return, humans could provide practical wisdom and creative problem-solving skills that might help the aliens see familiar challenges. In new ways, the two teams decided to continue their exploration of the ruins together, but now as true partners, rather than as senior and junior members of an expedition. The Zephyrians began sharing their advanced scanning data with the humans, while Kevin Wright and Dr. Campbell offered insights about the jungle environment and the ancient symbols that their alien colleagues had missed. Working together, they discovered that the ruins were much more extensive than either group had realized. The combination of Zephyrian technology and human intuition revealed hidden passages and secret chambers that contained artifacts and writings from the lost civilization. Each new discovery required both advanced analysis and creative interpretation. To unlock its secrets, tech specialist Mordex found himself learning from Kevin Wright about how to observe natural patterns and environmental clues that his instruments could not detect. The plant expert taught the alien scientist to look for subtle signs in the way vines grew over certain stones and how different types of moss indicated the presence of metal or other materials beneath the surface. Amy Rodriguez worked with the Zephyrian communication systems to create a more reliable link between the surface team and their ships in orbit. The combination of human adaptability and alien technology resulted in a communication network that was stronger and more flexible than either species could have built alone. As the day progressed, Vexstar made a decision that would change the relationship between humans and Zephyrians forever. He announced that he would recommend to his government that humans be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with such status. He argued that any species capable of saving lives with half an onion clearly possessed wisdom that the galaxy needed. The High Chancellor also proposed that the two species establish a permanent joint research station on Verdania, where human scientists and Zephyrian researchers could work together to study the ancient ruins and learn from each other's methods. This facility would become a symbol of cooperation and mutual respect between very different but equally valuable civilizations. As the sun began to set over the jungle canopy, both teams gathered around a small fire that Kevin Wright had built. Using traditional camping methods, the Zephyrians watched with interest as the humans prepared a simple meal using their emergency rations. Enhanced with some of the remaining onions and other vegetables from their supplies, Vexstar accepted a portion of the human food and ate it slowly, savoring flavors that his people's advanced nutrition systems could never reproduce. He realized that there was value not just in the efficiency of technology, but also in the simple pleasures and practical wisdom that came from staying connected to basic natural processes. The story of how a human scientist saved an alien leader's life with half an onion spread quickly through both civilizations when the expedition returned to their ships. It became a symbol of how different approaches to knowledge could complement each other, and how wisdom often came from the most unexpected sources. The incident marked the beginning of a new era of cooperation between humans and Zephyrians, built on mutual respect and the understanding that every species had something valuable to contribute to the greater community of intelligent life in the galaxy.